We are right now. Okay, good evening. Welcome to the November 22nd meeting of the full BET. We are all live in Town Hall. This is not a Zoom meeting. It is being broadcast on Channel 79 and 20, I think 24, 25 on FiOS. So I would like everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It was good to be in unison for a change and not on Zoom where everybody was fading in and out. I'm going to entertain a motion to enter executive session. Seconded, moved by Beth and seconded by Leslie Tarkington. It's 6:32, and we are entering into executive session. Okay, so we exited Catherine at 7:07. Motion was made by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Mr. Raymer, for the record. Which brings us to our agenda and Mr. Drake.
Sure, I'll read the non-routine application, which is SE8 from the First Selectman's Office. It's a settlement of this case in the amount of $7,500.
Okay, and we have committee reports. I'll do the law committee first. This case involved an accident where a police officer sideswiped a vehicle, causing some significant damage and some damage to a person. There's no dispute that the police officer caused the accident. In mediation, it was felt that a jury would not embrace what's called government immunity defense, and they would likely find that he did not engage in the pursuit pursuant to departmental policy, rendering it a ministerial rather than a discretionary action, which would negate the government immunity. The recommendation from the judge in the case was that the case settled for $9,000 with $7,500 being paid by the town and $1,500 being paid by a co-defendant who actually was the cause of the series of events that led to the accident. And the law committee voted 2-0-0 to recommend to the full BET that this settlement offer be accepted with the appropriate releases. And we have the budget committee.
Yes, there's no additional information to add. The budget committee voted 4-0-0 to recommend the application to the full BET.
Okay.
We'll take a vote starting with Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
Juice.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Karen?
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington?
Yes.
Moriarty?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Mr. Kremick?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
That was unanimous.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, the routine applications, Mr. Drake.
We have 3 routine applications. I'll read them all together. HD3 from the Health Department, $121,281.20, which is an approval to use funds. PB1 from the Probate Court, $14,048, which is a transfer. And PD2 from the Police Department, $16,241, which is approval to use funds.
Okay, thank you. Just to note, the Health Department was asked for additional information from the Budget Committee, which was provided to all members of the BET, so there should be no other further questions.
Since these are routine, do you want me to just ask if there's any
Yeah, on all 3.
opposition?
Yes.
Anyone wish to
Anybody?
say no? Hearing none, that was unanimous.
Okay, so 12-0-0 for the 3 applications. Thank you. Lauren, Miss Elliott, our assessor, welcome. Good to see you in person again after all this time.
There we go. Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair and fellow members of the BET. Oops, sorry.
I just want to correct the record, that's true. It was 1100 because Deborah Hess is not yet here, so
Thank you.
on both the settlement and the other thing, thank you for that.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. Good to see you all again in person. I'd like to present the assessor's report for November 2021. So currently, we're working on the 2021 grand list. We sent out personal property declarations to all the businesses in town in September, and we are currently reviewing and determining the valuations of those, and reviewing all the declarations that have been sent back to our office to date. For the motor vehicle, we expect to receive the motor vehicle list from the Department of Motor Vehicles in December. Once we receive the list, we'll price out all the motor vehicles, and we'll have those totals to you by the end of January. The big thing, 2020 revaluation. On November 5th, we sent out notices to every property owner with their preliminary assessments. To date, or last week, Tyler Technology, which is the revaluation company that did the residential portion of the revaluation, started their informal hearing process. They are not having hearings this week, but they will resume the hearings again next week and have hearings throughout the month of December and January. They should supposedly have enough slots and availability for anybody who wishes to have an informal hearing. Commercial hearings, informal hearings, will begin next Monday, and they will continue starting next Monday, the 29th, and they will also continue through December and January. Our expectation so far is that we've only had 25 sign up for commercial hearings, but there will be more in January, as I know that there's the companies that do this for a living, the tax rep companies, are out there now looking at all our values, and I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of them in January. With that said, we have also provided, in addition to the informal hearings, we've also provided in the assessor's office as well as on the website a listing of all sales from the last few years since the last revaluation or since 2016. We also have listings on the website as well as in our office that for people to compare their assessments with their neighbors. Those are done by district and by street listings. So if anybody is curious to see what their neighbor's assessment did as well, all of that information is available out on our website and in our office. We're also extending our office hours for a couple of evenings till 7 o'clock. On the evenings that there are informal hearings, we'll be open to the public till 7. And then we will also be available on Saturdays. We have informal hearings on Saturdays as well, scheduled through the month of December, and our office will be open during that time as well. So hopefully we've had we'll have enough information and enough time slots for everybody to have any of their questions or answered or issues addressed at this point in time. Okay? Anybody have any questions for me this evening?
I just want to make a comment. I know, I'm amazed too. Nobody has any questions. But I just also want to make a comment. I know how hard your staff and yourself have been working on this revaluation. It hasn't been easy with COVID. We just want to recognize you and your staff for the Herculean job. I'm Greek, I have to get that Herculean job that you and your staff have done in getting this completed. The interesting part will be coming ahead, as you know. Just on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for all the work you've done and the professionalism that you display. So thank you.
Ms. Vasiliotis?
Yes, sorry.
I didn't raise my hand fast enough, but I did just wanted to get on record at the meeting that the bottom line impact of the revaluation on what the total grand list number looks like for the town now versus 2016, and I know it'll be adjusted.
I don't know that number yet.
Okay.
I don't have the motor vehicle and the personal property list. I don't even have the motor vehicle listed.
All right, well,
yes.
let's qualify it then residential and commercial, or just residential?
As far as what the...
So this revaluation compares to the 2016 valuation. In the interim, our grand list has reflected only building permits and the change in valuations for those construction projects and new builds. but there is a valuation difference in the number that you currently have for 2020, for 2021 versus 2016, or if the relevant comparison is 2020. But I'm just asking for what that percentage increase in the grand list is for the work that your department has done. I recognize it will change.
This is a very, very preliminary number. So I would say, and I'll qualify this, that it may change substantially or it may not, but the overall grand list may change somewhere between 4 and 5% increase. But like I said, I don't want to be held to that if it changes substantially. Do also understand that one thing I don't have control over is the Board of Assessment Appeals. And they may change things substantially, so it's hard to know exactly what may happen, what will or will not happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
So I move that we accept the report.
And no opposition?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It was 11-0.
And again, thank you, Lauren. Mr. Menarski, Controller's Report.
Good evening, everyone.
All good news, I hope.
Great to see everyone back after, I think, a year and a half. I have a couple comments, and then I'll open up to questions. First of all, the American Rescue Plan Working Group is moving along and starting to pick up steam. It's on page 1, and Ben Branyan has done a tremendous job as far as documenting everything. And what's noted in the second to the last paragraph is he's earmarked about 100% of the two tranches, the 15.4 and the total coming up to 31.4. We've got the first piece, 15.7 in June, and we'll get the second piece in either May or June. So he's done a great job, and I think everybody knows the process. It comes out of that working group, it goes to the BET Budget Committee, and then it goes to the BET, and then it goes to the RTM. The money's appropriated, and then the Finance Department has the task of tracking the expenditures and making sure that they're audit-proof, which would probably occur years from now. And I'll have 2 more comments, then I'll open it up. We can go back to that. The annual audit, the auditors notified me this morning that the Federal Office of Management and Budgets has yet released their compliance directive that they did not release till December of last year. They can't proceed with the single audit and the federal audit piece of the audit. So I had to write to the Office of Policy and Management this morning and get an extension till January 1st. If you recall, last year, we had to have 2 extensions. It doesn't reflect on the Finance Department or the auditors. The audit will be completed. You'll get the financial report well in advance of the Audit Committee in December, and we'll just have to approve the single audits in March, February or March, depending on when they finish. And then the third set of comments is we're going to go to market, as we always do in January. We have $40 million in general obligation bonds and $75 million in bond anticipation notes. We're trying to get the credit reviews, which will be Zoom. We're shooting for December 1st. It'll be Moody's and S&P, Standard & Poor's. And we'll probably go to market on either January 4th or 5th. So we can go back to the page 1 and I'll answer any questions.
Questions? Boy, this is a docile group tonight. No questions? Okay, you got off easy tonight.
So I move we accept the Controller's Report.
Second.
Okay, moved by Leslie Tarkington, seconded by Bill Drake. All in favor? Aye. Any objections?
It was 12.
That's 12-0-0. And welcome, Deborah Hess. Haven't seen you in a while.
This one's mine. Sorry for being a little late.
That's okay, no
Nice to see
problem.
everybody.
Treasurer's report.
I
Up again, Pete.
I don't usually speak, but I can if anybody has any questions on the treasurer's report. You've got the activity through October 21st. The tax collections are great. We've got a large balance in the general fund of $170 million through 5 months. The Opeb trust fund, which reports to the Investment Advisory Committee, is doing great for the first 5 months. Capital projects will refinance in January. The capital non-recurring, which is annually a budget committee issue, is at $11.3 million. The parking fund is surviving the COVID experience over the last 18 months. Sewer improvement basically is okay. It doesn't carry much cash. And then there's the risk fund at $4,463,000. We've only had 2 payouts this year. There was the FEMA payout for $90,000, and then there was a very small payout for $4,500 that was approved by the comptroller and the town attorney per the BET policy on claims under $5,000. And I talked about the ARP funds, $15.7 million, and then there's the other funds on this document. Any questions on the treasurer's report?
No questions? Get a motion?
Move to accept the treasurer's report.
Okay, moved by Leslie
Second.
Tarkington, seconded by Bill Drake.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? That was 1101.
Okay, standing committee reports, audit, Bill Drake.
I promised just to give a list of the topics that are ahead of us for the future meetings of the audit committee. And Pete Minarski helpfully helped me remember. So these are the items. We'll examine the write-off policy and the write-offs of receivables at the Witherell. Secondly, we will examine, with Megan Zaneski's help, extending the policy that puts the burden of expense of automobile accidents, pushes it down to each department to encourage responsibility. Thirdly, we'll approve the annual financial report. Fourthly, we'll examine the legal letter of litigations with predicted costs. We have a golf course audit coming our way, and after that, an audit of the police side jobs. We have an audit plan for the next 2-year term that we'll examine. We have the tax delinquency policy, which we may talk about later today, but the work has been done. We'll examine the reissuing of the cybersecurity insurance policy. We'll have an RFP for an outside auditor because their duration of their contract has come up, and we'll engage outside auditors for the next batch of audits. Those are the topics ahead of us.
Great, thank you. And if anybody on the board has other topics that weren't mentioned here, I urge you to contact Bill so that he could discuss it with the audit committee in December. Thanks. Okay, next BET liaison reports, the the tax collector. I'm going to let you handle this one, Mr. Raymer, since you've been very vociferous about this.
Sure. So there are 4 liaisons working with the tax collector, myself, Beth Krummick, and Karen Fasiliotis and Leslie Tarkington. And we've been meeting more or less monthly with her. Most of the meetings have been joined by Dennis Kokinos from the town attorney's office. And at this point, we seem to have pretty much reduced this down to a relatively high level of organization, where Attorney Kokinos is in the process of bringing actions in enforcement of the delinquent accounts. There are 9 accounts which have passed through the 15-year statute of limitations, although not for highly material dollar figures. Those accounts, they of course still have balances that are 14 years out, 13 years out, 12 years out, et cetera. Those are on the list of actions that Attorney Kakinos will be bringing. There's also a process of bringing our policies closer to compliance with the Connecticut general statutes, which require that the tax collector come before the finance board not less often than annually to be presenting those accounts that the tax collector believes are uncollectible. The purpose of that exercise is to take those accounts off of the grand list. If it's an uncollectible account, it should not be included on the grand list. There'll be a brief expression of policy brought back to this board, but in words or substance, I believe the plan is that the tax collector will be planning to come before the BET in March of each year, presenting that list, if there are any on the list at that point. And so I think with that, I think the process at the tax collector's office will be brought more or less in compliance with town policy and with the Connecticut general statutes, and that's kind of where we are at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Raymer. Any questions? Any follow-up? No? Okay. I would also like to thank the tax collector and Attorney Kakinos also for their diligence and cooperation in the whole process. It's been a collaborative effort, and we thank them. So thank you for that report. BET Special Project Team reports, Leslie Moriarty on the GHS Building Committee.
Yes, thank you. So I'm the member from the BET that sits on the Building Committee. Currently, we've been meeting very frequently, most Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. The architect has hired was Silver Petrocelli and Associates. To date, the design for the vestibule project and the layout have been identified and voted on by the committee. It provides an entry vestibule in front of the current entrance. It will allow better security for visitors' entrance, so people can be stopped from entering the building if they are not approved or shouldn't be there. The security desk will be placed inside this new structure. The students will be able to enter into the glass corridor at the start of school, just as they do now, but visitors, once drop-off is completed, will need to sign into the security desk and be directed into a new entrance that goes through the administration's office, and from there they can be given access to the building. The landscaping and exterior lighting options have been presented and are still being refined. HVAC alternatives are still being evaluated. The project will be getting a bid to add air conditioning to the glass corridor, which is not currently provided yet. And just to remind the board that the fiscal '22 approved budget was $2,750,000 for this project. So far, the Board of Education has approved the design development documents. It has gone to the Board of Selectmen, who voted to adopt the municipal improvement status for this project. So now it goes to P&Z, and we're currently in committees. They presented to ARC last week. We'll need to go back to ARC. The Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals has approved the variance for the FAR for this structure. And the committee, or our committee, hopes to present to the full P&Z Commission in December. The process has been including neighbors in the vetting. There's at least one neighbor on the committee itself, but they've also been active giving comments. And the neighbors are supportive of the building addition, but would like to include requirements to improve the landscaping at the front of the building and elsewhere on the building, and to address the lighting issues, both the interior lighting from the building as well as exterior lights as part of this project. They also continue to identify issues with traffic and the desire for the secondary egress onto Putnam Avenue during the public hearings. So there's always the potential that there may be a scope increase in the project if P&Z includes conditions for its approvals that could have an impact on project budget, but that's what will need to be determined as we go forward. The timetable target is for construction to start in the summer of 2022, and construction's estimated right now to take about 8 months to complete.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Moriarty? Yes, Andy?
I've heard that there's been some interest in making greater security or making stronger glass in the entryway, is that going to have any budget impact, or what's happening with that?
I think, so the design for the vestibule is primarily a glass structure, which is almost 2 stories in height, to be in front of the glass corridor. And it is expected that that will be either ballistic-proof glass or have coatings to make it impenetrable from the outside. There are questions about where it stops and starts. The glass corridor itself is not coated with that same material, and so that's not strictly part of the scope, but may come up as an issue. But yes, it's supposed to keep the building from that front main entrance from being able to be entered by an individual or a group that is not supposed to be there.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, when this was not part of the original scope, and I was curious, will that have much of a budget impact?
I think it was. I think the
was it? Okay.
anticipation was that they were going to have some kind of structure and mostly glass that would not be penetrated. But until the RFPs go out and the full scope of the project's known, we won't really know the cost of the project. The strategy will be to put as many alternates into the bid document so you can have different ways of addressing that same concern.
And I think we also need to be aware of supply chain issues as well. I know that I was talking to Mr. Manelli, and he said that steel right now is the big bugaboo, where before it used to be plywood. So we also have to be conscious of that. Okay, any further questions? No? Okay, moving on to new business. Acceptance of the July 1st, 2021 Opeb actuarial valuation. Mr. Deuce.
Okay, thank you. In the IAC meeting we had earlier this month, Greg Stump, the town's outside actuary from Boomer Shine Consulting, gave the firm's annual actuarial report valuation for the Opeb Trust as of July 1st, 2021. And this report's included in the packet for tonight's meeting. On page 1 of the report, it shows a set of summary calculations for the current year and also what's projected or subject to BET approval for this next fiscal year, fiscal 23. In essence, the key number that the report generates is what's called an ADEC, an actuarially determined employer contribution. And this year, we are making a payment to the fund of $3.8 million. For fiscal 23, based on the July 1 valuation, the contribution will increase. And if for approval tonight, the proposal is to reduce the assumed return on assets from the 7% that was used this year, and also for the past few years for that matter, down to 6.75 for fiscal 23. If that's accepted, the ADEC will grow from 3.8 million to 4.459 million. That increase was surprising to me initially because I looked closely at the proceedings of the retirement board and with the defined benefit plan. And you may recall they also reduced their assumed return from 6.25% to 6.0%. And surprisingly, they were also able to reduce the ADEC, in part because it had a very high investment return this past year of about 27%. The Opeb Trust had a similar return, so I was hopeful, but to my surprise, the estimates for healthcare costs rising next year are about 14%. And that overwhelmed the benefit of the investment gains, which, by the way, are amortized uniformly over 5 years into the ADEC calculation. In other words, if we keep the discount rate and assumed returns unchanged at 7%, we still would have an increase of about $500,000 or so. So that was disappointing. Another driving factor for the increase is we're in the process of reducing the amortization period for the underfunding. This past year, I think it was for or this year was over a 19-year period. For fiscal 23, it'd be over an 18-year period. It's going to be reduced annually until we reach 15 years. And we're going to keep it there. That was determined a few years ago. And we decided not to make any changes to that this year. Again, by comparison, the retirement fund uses a shorter period and being amortized down to 10 years, which is a little bit more aggressive than what we use. So the committee discussed the merits of decreasing the assumed return. We asked Mr. Stump what his thoughts might be, and he would find either acceptable, either 7% or 6.75. We also asked Mr. Stump what are other Connecticut municipalities doing, and increasingly more and more of these municipalities are saving for Opeb trust expenses. And he said probably more than half now are using rates below 7. We had a long discussion. I think the committee could have gone either way. We ultimately voted 3-1-0 to accept the lower discount rate, or to recommend the lower discount rate. And we could discuss that in a second, but let me finish the report. Also in the packet, you'll see the copy of the investment policy statement for the Opeb Trust. That one change was reflected. It was 7, now it's shown as 6.75. And we showed both the marked up version and the clean version. I don't know why both copies got in there, but you have both copies, clean and marked up. Anyway, so I think I'd like to pause here and maybe open up discussion on what my colleagues might think, if they have any thoughts on the right discount rate or what the recommended discount rate might be. By the way, I say discount rate, I use the term interchangeably. In municipality land, they all use the same rate, whether it's assumed return on assets and discount rate for the liability.
Thank you. Any comments, concerns, questions? Yes, Ms. Hess.
So my question is, when you think about the discount rate, it's meant to be over a long period of time, and it's not meant to be like a 1 year. And so just because you think in 1 year you're not going to be able to hit that hurdle rate is not really a reason to lower the rate. So since we knocked it out of the park this past year, I mean, how are we thinking about?
Well, I know the question, and precisely for that reason, if you look back at history, if you get a market return of that's very high in 1 year, typically the returns the following years are a little bit lower. I'll defer to some of my more seasoned investment pros next to me here, but that's my general sense. And look, in the long run, all that really matters here is not the assumptions we make. It's really what the assets earn and what our experience is with this. And if you assume a slightly lower rate, all that means is you're going to be making some incremental payments a little bit earlier. But in the long run, it all averages out. I don't think it's a big decision.
Ms. Erickson.
So along those lines, I don't have a problem with changing the discount rate necessarily, but of concern is the healthcare increase of 14%, which you alluded to just overshadowed the investment performance of the fund. So what are we doing to mitigate, and can you explain, the difference, 14% for the Opeb pool versus 6% for the town at large? Do we have any control over how to mitigate that 14% increase? Because that's clearly driving this.
I think a good way to look at the increase in the healthcare costs, it's akin to a cost of living increase of 14% for all the retirees. I mean, it's just that simple. Yeah, yes.
I believe, though, that our state healthcare plan has 2 different rates, one for active employees and one for retired employees, and that's why this is taking place. So there's a large differential that perhaps we weren't so aware of until this particular Opeb actuarial report was prepared.
Yeah, that's correct, Leslie. And to a certain extent, it's out of our control. One of the takeaways from our meeting was, let's get a copy of this report to Mr. Mason ASAP, because we really have to address that part of the equation very much so.
Yeah,
Yes, David.
if I could,
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Ms. Erickson.
Sorry, if I could just follow up, because it wasn't really clear to me from reading this report, that 14%, so I'm glad that you reported on it as such. But is the different, I mean, the active employees obviously are under our state plan, but is it the retired employees? What's driving it? And what can we do to either have wellness, is it a unusual claims history? Is it a lack of wellness programs? I mean, what, if anything, you say we don't have control over it, but if we don't have some control over it, this is going to get out of control real fast.
Pete or Roland, can you weigh in?
Roland's an expert in this area, and I hope I don't steal anything from him. There's two things. Number one is we are required to have physicals and have dental work. And if we don't have it done annually, we're penalized. I think it's $300, or the deductible is $300. It's $100 a month. Plus, to the point of Mr. Mason and his predecessors, in the contracts, we've been increasing the contribution. So that's mitigate or help in some of it. Beyond that, I don't know what else we can do other than we have a form of a wellness program, and we have increased contributions per the contract.
Right. Right. The other thing is these are retirees as opposed to, which is an older population, generally speaking, than the town population. So they're rated completely differently and have higher expenses.
so we spent a bit of time at the IAC on this issue. Yes, my mic is on. We spent a bit of time on this issue, and I think the conclusion we reached, and Andy, correct me if I'm saying it wrong, is that the real takeaway from this is, as Andy points out, the 14% growth. And of course, it applies most to the 55 to 65-year-old category of those people who are retired. Those people who are still working in the 55 to 65, as Leslie Tarkington said, are at a lower rate. So the question becomes, and then after 65, you go in Medicare and the rates go down. This is not an issue for the IAC, in my opinion. It's an issue for the BET or maybe the HR committee. It's a broader issue that we do need to look at because, for example, there may be incentives for keeping employees on the payroll at between 55 and 65 because, the cost to the town is less right now because of the lower health premiums. These premiums are not small. I'm not saying we want to take a different policy, but there are all kinds of, what we should be looking at here is a kind of a stress case scenario where we look at our, whether it's these rocketing healthcare costs or the COLA expenses that we're seeing that are going to hit us. And so what we should be looking at is what kind of stress could this put on our budget over a period of time if they continue, and what actions, if any, can we take? So it's not really an IAC issue in my mind. And we talked about this. We thought maybe the HR committee could look at this, or maybe some have said that there used to be a healthcare committee of the BET altogether, given the importance of this in previous years. So I don't know what the right reaction is or what the should be, but that's sort of, did I get that right?
Ms. Cruiser?
And just to add to that, as part of the work that I think the same members who are part of the IAC did for the Pension Reform Committee, one of the things we looked at, and we looked at it mostly for the retirement board, but what happens to the liabilities that we have as a town if suddenly the pool of active employees becomes inactive, and how does the model change, and are we prepared for that? Because in some ways it sounds very good to sort of say, well, let's cap how much retirement we're going to pay out in future years, but the truth is we have to pay that retirement sooner, and there is nothing more obvious as to how very careful we need to be with those types of incentives for early retirement, et cetera, as what happens in this Opeb, these Opeb assets. Because really, if that number of retired before Medicaid population grows, we will have a ballooning liability on the Opeb side. So, as we think about these different structures and ideas as to what to do with the aging population of our town employees, I think we have to understand that, there are a lot of levers that suddenly move on a very small idea. And some may be positive, but the flip side is that some actually may be very negative, at least immediately, to the taxpayers. So. Oh, may I just add one
Yes, go
other
ahead,
thing?
Ms.
Just to sort of put a period on something that Mr. Deuce said. Our contribution at 7% would have been roughly, at 7% would have been 4.3 million. Our contribution at 6.75 is 4.45. So it's de minimis at the end of the day. I will just offer that I was originally very much a fan of the 7%. I thought it, for a host of reasons that we've spoken about in the past, in terms of the growth of the liabilities in this portfolio, the fact that we can take on more risk, we could stomach the 7% discount rate. That being said, we've done a lot of work, I think, over the last year to really make this portfolio and the general management of these assets more institutional-like in the way we look at them. It really struck me that Greg Stump, our actuary, noted that most other municipalities are under that 7% target. So I think in the view of moving this more towards an institutionally managed, thoughtful, kind of put together portfolio, that the 6.75, particularly when we're talking about a de minimis amount, seemed reasonable.
Ms. Hess?
I just would be curious, do you know what the 5 and 10-year average rate of return has been? And then, yeah, maybe it's de minimis this year, but if you think about what you're talking about in terms of more people becoming retired, then it might not be de minimis, a couple of few years out anyway.
I don't have those numbers at my fingertips. The 5-year return, though, you may, is very high, given what happened this past fiscal year. Miriam, do you have those numbers?
I will find them in a minute, but the one of the important things is that, as Mr. Deuce said, we actually amortized the returns. They were 31% last year. We amortized them over 5 years. So we will get a benefit, 20% of that 31% over the next 5 years, which will be, hopefully, who knows where healthcare is going to go, but we know we have that sort of wind at our backs, at least for the next 4 after this one. And I will find those numbers.
Any other questions?
Okay,
And
so we
I'd just like to add that we are taking healthcare seriously on the HR committee. So that is something that, we do look at, and we did get the Kermer report last month, but it is something that we are very conscious of. So thank you for raising it. Okay. Yes, I do need a motion.
I move that we shift the discount rate from 7% to 6.75%.
Oops, sorry, that was my.
First, accept the report.
Point of order is I
Yes.
think we first have to accept the actuarial report.
You are correct.
I amend my motion to first accept the actuarial report.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Tarkington. A motion by Mr. Weisbrod. Okay.
Great. Sure. Yes, Eric.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. Get the motion on the
Now we got the second motion. Go ahead.
the second motion is to move this discount rate from 7% to 6.75%.
Do
Accept
I have
the
a second?
policy, right?
Second by Ms. Tarkington.
Point of order.
Yes.
Is that to accept the revised investment policy?
Yeah. I think that's right.
That's,
I
this
think
is,
that'd be separate. No?
Separate? Okay.
that's a separate, yes.
What, do we need to accept the change in the amortization period from 19 to 18, or is that something we already adopted?
That was adopted. We chose not to make any changes to the adopted schedule. Okay.
Okay, so we have on the floor a change on the return rate, the assumed return rate from 7 to 6.75.
Isn't that
Yeah.
percentage the only change in the IPS that we're looking at?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
it's,
You have it both in a markup version and a clean version.
yeah, so this motion of accepting the rate and accepting the IPS is the same. It's a single motion. Single motion.
Correct.
Mr.
Yes.
Yes.
Raymer,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tucker,
Yes.
Ms. Faciotis,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
yes.
Abstain.
Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
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 Okay, so the next up is the amendment of the Opeb investment policy statement. Oh, we just did that, I'm sorry. I'm like, approve, okay, so the next up is the approval of the draft 2022 BET meeting calendar. You have in your packet, or you should have gotten a revised calendar. It was brought to my attention that there were a few meetings for the Budget Committee that had dates changed for whatever reason. I have no idea why. So they were changed back to what the BET Budget Committee had originally agreed to. The other substantial change is that the Budget Committee was moved from 1 to 5 p.m. just to accommodate people that I've been hearing from in the community asking that it be later so that they would be able to attend, especially since many are working. So I know that this calendar will likely change in the new session as we get new people on and the committees are formed and they meet. But for now, there is something that we just need to post. We've gotten the rooms available. And, if there are any comments or if there are any concerns, feel free to voice them. But I would like some sort of approval of the calendar, at least for the time being, noting that they may change in the future. And Mr. Weisbrot, I know that you're not available for the decision day. We're leaving it right now on the calendar the way it is, and we'll adjust accordingly once we get some additional information and we can figure out where we go with that because, we obviously want to accommodate you. So with that, those two notes,
Question?
yes,
I'm sorry. So I take it we're voting on this draft that's dated November 8th?
correct. Well,
But
no,
one
I'm
date is
sorry.
being,
I'm sorry, no, it was revised actually today. and
okay, but
sent out.
the one that's in our packet is dated 11/8.
Right.
Just so it's clear, what is the date that's changed so that,
You have the 3 dates? No, the 3 budget committee meetings
Oh,
that were changed.
the 2 budget committee
Or the
meetings
2.
were the ones that Jeff had previously approved. The March date was changed. It's on here on the old one for the 15th, and it was changed back to the 10th, which was the date you had on your calendar, Jeff?
yeah, I just wanted to be clear what we're voting on.
Okay, so the March 15th date for the budget committee was changed to March 10th, 22.
And the,
We're voting on what was apparently sent today, you're saying?
Well, it was what is in the package with 2 amendments, okay? There are 2 amendments to that, to what you have in front of you in the package. In the package, the Budget Committee was meeting 3/15/22, and that date is now 3/10/22 for the Budget Committee. So that's one amendment. And then the second amendment, Leslie, I'm sorry.
was, the date was, on this is May 17th, but what the budget committee members approved was May 10th.
I'm sorry,
Okay, so the May 17th date that is on the package is, for the Budget Committee, is now May 10th, 5/10/22, which is what you approved.
Yep.
Right. And with everything else remains the same. So with those two exceptions, everything else remains the same. But the caveat is that Mr. Weisbrod is not going to be available for the currently scheduled decision day. So we'll have to adjust those dates in the new session once we meet and figure out calendars. I'm sure there will be. But for the time being, something to post so that people can at least make their plans. If we can approve that with the two amendments, that would be great, unless there's any further discussion. Yes, Ms. Erickson.
I move to approve the calendar.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Erickson, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Tarkington.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain. I'm going to abstain. I don't want to approve a calendar when I'm, yeah.
11:01.
Okay.
Well,
What do you care?
Andy, you're okay? You're okay committing other people?
The calendar works for me.
Okay, so it's 11:01. Okay, update from the ARP Advisory Committee. I've asked Ms. Tarkington to just give a brief update.
Yes, Andy Deuce, Leslie Moriarty, Jeff Raymer, and I are each voting members, along with First Selectman Fred Camillo and Town Administrator Ben Branyan, in the First Selectman's American Rescue Plan Committee, also known as the ARP Committee. Other members include Caroline Baisley, Director of Health, Tyler Fairbairn, CDBG Administration, Pete Minarski, our Controller, and Demetria Nelson, the Commissioner of Human Services. The committee has held 5 meetings, with a 6th scheduled for tomorrow, Tuesday, November 23rd at 1:30 p.m. in the Cone Room. The ARP proposed projects is a work in progress, and the town administrator is diligently keeping the working group on track. At the last meeting, we learned from CCM what types of projects other Connecticut towns are proposing. There is substantial material on the town website on a designated American Rescue Plan webpage with background on the ARP program from the federal government, great PowerPoint presentations prepared by Ben and by Demetria, and the latest worksheet of proposed projects dated November 8th, prepared by Ben and discussed by the committee. We expect that list to be further refined over the next 2 months. The town is scheduled to receive $31.4 million. The purpose of the ARP program is a COVID-19 stimulus package. It is meant to speed up the town's recovery from the economic and health effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Separately, BOE Schools is scheduled to receive $9.6 million of ARP ESSER 3 funds. The U.S. Treasury has provided tight guidelines for funds use. Use and deadlines for completion are tightly restricted. The town will be audited thereafter for compliance. Pete has already told us about the ambitious timetable, but it's to have the ARP committee make recommendations to the BET in the second week of January, and to have the BET Budget Committee and BET review the recommended funding in January. The recommendations would be submitted to the RTM in February, with their action expected in March. Under this timetable, the funds would be available for disbursement on March 15th, 2022.
Thank you. Anything to add by other members of the committee? No? Okay, thank you for that update. Next up is the approval of the October 18th, 2021 regular meeting.
I'll move the minutes.
So moved and seconded.
By Deborah.
Seconded by Ms. Hess.
All those in favor, please let us know. All those opposed? I don't think there was any opposition. That was 12-0.
Great. Okay, that was easy. Thank you. Okay, Chair's report. Well, the election is behind us, and we are winding down the last year of the term of this BET. After tonight, we have one more meeting with all of us, and we will all have the opportunity to thank all of you who will be leaving this board at our next meeting, so get ready. We still have a lot of work to do. The first selectman will be presenting his budget, and the Board of Education will be approving their recommended budget. The projects for the American Rescue Plan, funds of 31 million plus, must still be finalized. And while it's the first selectman's responsibility, we have 4 members on that committee who will be instrumental in those decisions. There are still ongoing litigations facing our town and investment decisions to be made. The audit committee will be lining up future audits, as we heard tonight. Additionally, our new members will need to be brought up to speed so that they can hit the ground running when they are sworn into January. So we all have our work cut out for us as we wind down this term. And that being said, I would like to wish everyone on this board and to those who are watching on GCTV a very happy Thanksgiving. And if you're traveling, safe travels. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Adjourned at 8:02. Thank you, everyone. I think that was a record.
Yeah, it would have been, what did we start, 6:30?
6:30. Onward and upward. You were so quiet tonight, Jeff. I didn't have to use this.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Take care, Deborah.